What does it mean to be an optimist, and how is being optimistic going to help you to quit drinking alcohol? Now, I think you should always choose positivity. You should always choose optimism. A lot of people say, well, optimism is just fooling yourself. It's just looking at the world through rose-tinted glasses, and that's not the way to go through life. Because you're not seeing life as it truly is. But what is reality? Reality is for you is what you see and how you interpret it. It's not. Reality is different for everyone. In order for you perceive something, it goes into your mind, in through your senses. Through your eyes, your ears, your touch, your hearing, and it goes through a whole load of filters inside, and your brain interprets that information, and it interprets it through the filters are basically what you've learned throughout your life. Your specific brand of reality is how you specifically are going to look at something. And optimism, looking at things through an optimistic frame of mind, is basically looking at things optimally, looking at things that are going to benefit you in the best way possible for you, right? Not for anyone else, for you. What you might think of as being optimistic, some other person might not think in that way at all. They might think, well, that's not very optimistic, you know what I mean? Or I don't feel optimistic when I think that way. So this is all about optimism, optimal thinking for you from your perspective, right? It's seeing life through a frame of mind which thinks, well, no matter what happens, I'm going to try and see the best for me. I'm going to try and look at these things from the best frame of mind. What's the point in looking at things from the worst frame of mind? I mean, you can do this. There's like a technique for examining problems, right, in your life, and you come up with a problem and something happens, and you might start catastrophizing, right? You might start to see, well, this is shit, and this is horrible, and everything else is linked to this, and everything else is going to go to hell now because this one problem has come up in my life. And you can look at things from the worst possible outcome. And what is the worst possible outcome? What's the worst thing that can possibly happen because this thing has happened, And if you can get down to that and figure it out, and then see if you can handle that, or what you can do if that particular worst thing occurs, and more than likely that worst thing is not going to happen, especially if you understand, and you do something about it. If you understand the problem for what it is and you attempt to do something about it, it's when you don't do something about it often that the worst possible outcome will happen. But an optimist basically sees things, he sees setbacks as only temporary, right? He sees these things, something that happens, and the feeling of discomfort through this is only temporary, right? Quitting drinking, when you stop drinking alcohol, the optimist is always going to look at the discomfort, the cravings, the discomfort of having to think about all these other things that you want to do in your life. He sees these things as just a temporary setback, that as the days go on, life is going to get easier. The discomfort is going to disappear. The discomfort is going to ease first and then gradually disappear as you do other things, as you use the time and energy, money that you were using for alcohol as doing something else, right? The optimist also sees these problems as, any problems that they come across as being separate in and of themselves, right? That it's not anything to do with anything else. Whereas the pessimistic person, those with a negative outlook will see a problem as being a sign that everything is wrong, you know, seeing that, you know, the whole system has failed, that this is just yet another sign that you know, that their life is shit, or that they're not worth it, or that they can't do this, you know. That's what a pessimist sees. But an optimist always sees each individual problem as an individual problem, and it tackles it as an individual problem. Another area where pessimists and optimists differ is that an optimist will always look at a problem as being external to themselves, right? So it's happening outside of themselves. It's something that happens in their environment with people around them, but whatever it is, and they have got to deal with that, you know. They've got to figure out a way of dealing with that. Whereas a pessimist will always look at something as being an internal. It's part of themselves. It's, you know, their fault, or it's something that is, you know, they take personally. So when this person is saying, well, you know, when something happens to them, they say, well, you know, it's meant for me personally, you know. So one of the ways that you can sort of figure this out for yourself, one of the ways that you can be more optimistic in life is to, when a problem comes up, is to look at these problems as being specific, right? It's a specific problem that is due to specific circumstances. It's not an indication of overall doom, right? It's an external problem that is outside of yourself, and being outside of yourself is something that you can deal with, and it's only a temporary problem, you know. Nothing lasts. You know, when you quit drinking, the feelings that you're getting about quitting drinking, the cravings, all the bullshit that comes with quitting drinking, this is all going to disappear into the ether the more effort you put into it, right? So, you know, think about it from those perspectives. It's external, specific, and temporary. You know, so often it boils down to, you know, what can't be cured has got to be endured. So, you know, when you do quit drinking, in those first few weeks, you're going to have to put up with discomfort. You're going to have to do that. There's no way around it. You know, some people are going to go through a little bit more discomfort than others, but we all do go through discomfort from you know, one perspective or another, you know, from one degree to another, I should say. And you just have to put up with it. You have to put up with that little bit of pain. You know, this is a habit. It's an ingrained habit that is going to make you feel uncomfortable. It's going to make you feel like shit sometimes, because you can't do it, because this is what you used to do, and this is what your whole social circle is based around. This is what a lot of your life is based around. So, you know, when people talk about cravings and symptoms and side effects and all these kind of stuff, that's what they're talking about, is the missing elements in their lives, the parts of their lives which they now don't have a part of anymore. You know, they've extricated themselves from that. You know, this is part of their own choice, and it's, you know, you have to keep on the positive side of this, right? You have to look at things from the future, you know, from where it's taking you, you know, not where you've come from, because as soon as you start focusing on where you've come from and what you're missing out on, then, you know, it's so easy to sort of go, well, yeah, I'll give in today, because if I take a drink now, then, you know, all these problems are over with, and they're not over with. You know, as soon as you take a drink, you're building on the failure principle in your own mind that you know, that you can't do this. You're building on this self-belief that in the wrong direction, you know, and you're building on your own pessimism, you know, and your own negativity, that you know, you can't follow through with this. And you might not think that. You might think, well, you know, like I'm only doing it now because I'm going through this bad time or that bad time. And, you know, the bad times are being caused by what you're doing, you know. You know, external events happen. shit happens in life, and you've got to deal with that on its own terms. You can't sort of always go back to using a toxin like this, because you know it's going to bring you nowhere. It's going to bring you nothing but negativity. So, you know, look at every different situation. Even when you're getting a craving, it's a specific craving in context, right? In a specific context. You're thinking about drinking now. Why? You know, why are you thinking about drinking now? What is it about this particular situation or this particular environment, the people that you're with, that is making you think about drinking alcohol? There is something. There always is something, because it's not the drink that's calling you. Something inside your mind that's doing all the dirty work. You've got to figure that out, and then, you know, there is your specific. You know, the craving is only temporary. It's not going to last. You know, often one of the best cures for craving is to take yourself out of the situation that you were, even for a few minutes. Go to the toilet, go for a walk around the block, you know, breathe for a couple of minutes, just take deep breaths. And once you've done that, you realize that the craving is gone, you know, that the bones of the craving are gone, you know, the feeling might be still there, you know, the thoughts might be still there, but, you know, that overwhelming part of the temptation is gone. And, you know, these things are normally outside of yourself, you know, you know, it's something outside of yourself that is triggered off the craving. You know, it's the same thing when you're trying to quit drinking. It's often, it's always, nearly always, something outside of yourself that triggers off. It might be your thoughts, and your thought might be the first thing that you're aware of, that you want to take a drink, but there's something happening in your environment, something that somebody said to you, something that somebody's done, some part of where you are. That's the real trigger, you know. So you have to figure out those things. So that's it for today. I'll see you again tomorrow. You know, remember that there's no real point in looking at life through a pessimistic viewpoint. You know, being optimistic and seeing the best out of things, you know, it's going to make you happy. I mean, that's what it's all about. It's finding happiness not in the things that you have, but in the framework that you put around situations, framework that you put around your life. You know, build an optimal frame of mind around everything that you do, and you'll be a happy person. You won't want to go back drinking. You know, this is what it's done for me. You know, yeah, I can say that I'm negative in certain areas, and I'm working on those. Right, I can say that I was a lot more negative while I was drinking, certainly, and I've overcome a lot of that negativity and brought a lot of optimal thinking into my life, and that's all because I've stopped drinking. And because I stopped drinking, started with other things. You know, I started bringing in other good habits and getting rid of other bad habits out of my life. You know, I've gone in the opposite direction. Instead of making myself weaker, I've been making myself stronger and stronger and stronger over these last few years, and I can't see that changing anytime soon. The only time I can see that changing is if I go back and start those stupid fucking habits again, which I'm not going to do, right? So that's not going to happen. The more you get into this journey, the more you're going to realize that for yourself, the more you will build your self-confidence, your self-esteem, the more you will build that optimal frame of mind for yourself. You'll see everything as through a more optimistic viewpoint, and it's a good place to be. So until next time, I'm Kevin O'Hara for Alcohol Mastery. Keep safe, keep the alcohol out of your mouth, and keep going onwards and upwards.